Hello, everyone. This is JVL here with my Bulwark colleague, Andrew Egger. And we're going to talk about Donald Trump and the crime statistics in Washington, D.C., because our president has some very deep thoughts about his mission to liberate the nation's capital. Before we get started, please hit like and follow the feed. It helps us more than you could possibly imagine. Hashtag algorithm. Andrew, talk to me a little bit. We've got all sorts of stuff. We've got the president truthing out about DC's fake crime statistics and how within just a few hours of him sending militarized forces into the city, it is now the safest city on the planet or something like that, because sure, that makes sense. What's happening?
Yeah, so we're about a week and a half into this crime crackdown, so-called, that the president has put into place in D.C. He has federalized the police department, and he has put, D.C. police essentially under the supervision of the Drug Enforcement Agency from the federal government. And in addition to that, he has basically poured an alphabet soup of different federal law enforcement agencies, a bunch of different officers from a bunch of different places, just into the streets of D.C., particularly downtown, near the monuments, where, as everyone knows, the crime is always the thickest. You basically cannot walk from the Smithsonian's to the Washington Monument without getting shot or stabbed or trafficked. True. So just this morning, Trump is already kind of out taking a victory lap and all this stuff. I'll just read the Truth Social post here. DC gave fake crime numbers in order to create a false illusion of safety. This is a very bad and dangerous thing to do, and they are under serious investigation for so doing. Until 4 days ago, Washington, D.C. was the most unsafe city in the United States, unsafe city in the United States, quote unquote, and perhaps the world. Yeah. Now, in just a short period of time, it is perhaps the safest and getting better every single hour. People are flocking to DC again, and soon the beautification will begin. I mean, this is kind of amazing stuff, given that nothing has happened, right? I mean, truly nothing has happened except that they have put these cops in the streets. Other than that, life has been going on in the city basically as scheduled. People are weirded out about it. People are freaked out and wondering what's going to happen next. But the life has gone on. You know what I mean? But not according to the president, for whom a switch has been flipped. All crime has stopped, and DC has gone from the worst to the safest.
I have so many questions, Andrew, beginning with, could we get Child Protective Services to investigate any parents who ever brought their children to DC before Trump's Liberation Day, when it was the most unsafe city in the world? Because I mean, what sort of monsters would do that? Take their children to the most unsafe city in the world? How would that even go? I guess, I'm sorry, I'm being an asshole here, but it's just because, again, it's the president of the United States. He just says all these things which are untrue all the time. And the world doesn't react to it anymore. The world's just like, it's just the president of the United States saying lies.
Yeah, there's almost like a microcosm of the first term Trump, second term Trump in all of this, because first of all, this is a move that he has used since time immemorial, right? I mean, the classic example of this from the first term was the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement, which replaced NAFTA, right? That Trump inherited, this free trade system that we had with Canada and Mexico, that he constantly denounced as the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals. He tore it up. He renegotiated with those two countries, eventually inking a trade deal that was, for all intents and purposes, the exact same trade deal with a bunch of tiny little minor cosmetic differences that basically saved face. But that was the best trade deal we've ever had, right? And so that was a first term Trump thing where it's as soon as I've done it, it goes from the worst to the best. But that was pretty innocuous, right? I mean, that was just, tinkering around and creating a bunch of busy work for himself while he did this embarrassing thing that was obviously pathological, but basically harmless. This, like we said, has not had a lot of actual impact so far, but it is still, for reasons we've been talking about for weeks now, totally alarming and totally, sort of surreal and norm busting and bizarre and bad that we just have sort of the streets swimming with a bunch of, militarized federal cops that don't answer
mostly
to
masked.
the people that they're around and aren't used to doing this kind of police work, don't have a mission really other than to sort of mill about and fight crime. So it's much more sort of, it's the same pathology, but deployed in a much more sort of frightening and bad and norm-breaking way.
So you said that Trump's little truth bleat, he mentioned the false crime statistics. Can you talk a little bit about the crime statistics from over the weekend?
Yeah. So I mean, I've had a bee in my bonnet about this because ever since the crime rollout started, there has been this drumbeat of New York Post articles and tweets from federal law enforcement and from Carolyn Levitt, the White House press secretary, all about all of the good law enforcement that these guys are doing. You know, like, we made another 50 arrests last night. We've made 300 arrests so far in 2 weeks. I just saw a headline in the Post this morning, nearly 70 more arrested on Saturday night. And like, this is all sort of in service of, we're finally getting serious on crime. We're finally doing it. The buck stops here. You're not going to get away with it anymore. All that stuff. If you look, and the New York Times had something about this the other day. If you look at sort of just normal baseline median DC policing, the average number of people that the DC Metropolitan Police arrests in an average day is 68 people. That's the average. And that is the exact number that, again, the New York Post wrote up this morning. Carolyn Levitt dunked the basketball, spiked the football on social media this morning. So it is completely.
But didn't she say 70 arrests?
The headline said nearly 70, but
nearly
when you read the Post,
nearly. I was going to say, because maybe they got two extra. No, they didn't get two extra arrests.
Yeah, there's always a couple of gotaways, right? But it is completely just in the realm of narrative and spin and just the fact that we're now apparently going to like highlight every arrest that ever happens going forward in DC as like the president's agenda working. Whereas before, it was just city crime, right? And arrests happen, and it's good when they do, if there's criminal behavior and all that stuff. But it's a complete, like, spun up out of nowhere. It's cotton candy, this whole thing.
Well, cotton candy with maybe some arsenic laced into it, because the whole idea is to do this as a dry run for, can we get away with deploying National Guard in cities against their will? We did it in Los Angeles, and it kind of worked. We did it here. Maybe we do a little bit of this in Philly the week before the election. Right? Try to dissuade people from maybe turning out to vote in the midterm elections. I think they could. I don't see any reason why they couldn't shave a couple tenths of a point in turnout off by doing this sort of thing. Do you?
Yeah. I think there's basically like two tracks of this here. The one track, which is sort of like the hard power track, is like the test run that you're talking about. It's how much of this can we get away with here? How much can we get people acclimated to it? How much can we sort of sell people on the idea that it works? And then, there's the tiny little hang up that the Constitution lets us do a lot more in DC than it would let us do elsewhere, because DC is a federal city, the only one we have. And all these other cities are run by their respective states. So, there would be that additional barrier to getting over, but, the more he kind of sells it, as working here, the less anybody is likely to particularly care if and when he sort of tries to push beyond that in some of these other cities, as he has routinely promised over the last couple of weeks that he wants to, and indeed plans to do. The other side of this whole thing, and I wrote about this in Morning Shots this morning, is that sort of persuasive element. It's the salesmanship thing. And that matters, right? I mean, it actually matters quite a lot how well he sells this to his base in particular. Obviously, he doesn't care what we think or what the libs think or what, the mainstream media thinks. And he's obviously assisted in that by a humongously compliant, right-wing media and all these influencers, as he is in everything. But I think it's important to kind of drill down on what he is really trying to do, which is that it is true that the crime numbers were already falling. And it is true that so far, despite this big influx, it's not like we have seen a massive spike in new arrests, as we were just talking about before. It's kind of like business as usual, but with a much greater side of overreach and risk, in terms of, the likelihood of possible confrontations and things like that. But the other side of this whole thing is, and this is what I wrote about this morning, is how this stuff is supposed to kind of percolate into the MAGA mind, which is that it's not like your typical MAGA voter was sitting around before, like poring over lists of the various crime stats of the various American cities and being like, DC is interestingly disproportionately, they have too many carjackings. They're doing better on assaults, but the carjackings are out of control and somebody's really got to get on that, that kind of thing. No, it's very much this kind of social media and right-wing media generated sense in the id that things are spiraling out of control. And it's, which is fed by the algorithms. It's like, oh, I see you like to watch teenage gang crime content on your social feeds. Here's a bunch more of that forever, for like always now. I mean, and these are the kinds of like things that happen that then, create this sense for a lot of people that crime is still spiraling out of control in America when, if you look at the data, it really isn't. And if you're Donald Trump, it's not like you can, even if he wanted to like teach these people the truth that actually crime has like been getting better in America and, the rates are down and things like that. Even if he wanted to do that, he like down in his lizard brain knows you actually can't like just throw statistics at people who are like emotively invested in that narrative. So what he is basically doing is he's out here like a film producer, right? He's like, I need to give these people the crackdown cop video content, to go along with the kind of criminal video content that's been making them mad. And if I can get that in their feed, if I can like, here are some videos of crimes happening, but then here are some videos of Trump's military
Cops
police
beating
in
brown
DC.
people.
Exactly. And that's like what triangulates out to law and order, if you're a MAGA guy, today. So I don't think it's a risk like that. I don't think it's like downside risk that there could be these kinds of confrontations, and have started to be a few of these confrontations already. I kind of think that's the point of the enterprise.
That is I'm so glad you said that, because it struck me I was just thinking about this over the weekend. There is a responsible way that you could have gone about this program. So I don't mean like a wise way. I think it is pernicious and malevolent to try to send federal forces in to do law enforcement in Washington, D.C. But let's just pretend that you have a pernicious, malevolent president who was going to do that, but they decided to do that in a way that was responsible, meaning that minimized the potential for conflict between citizens and cops, and that maximized the ability to actually target places where crimes were happening. And I would say that what the administration is doing is almost the opposite of that. They're doing it in the most irresponsible way, the way in which is designed to create the maximal chances of conflict and the maximal chances of winding up with protesters coming to blows with agents of the state who are not conducting themselves the way agents of the state typically do. And that suggests to me that like it's probably not an accident, right? They're doing it in the most irresponsible way possible because they want something to happen. Yeah.
And this as well is kind of operating on two tracks, right? Like they are sort of trying to do part of it has to do with like the sort of immigration enforcement stuff that they're doing everywhere. So that is sort of like, targeting, Hispanic people, and working people, like that's one side of these confrontations. And we've seen some of that in DC already. But the other side of this is the stuff that is completely just sort of like instigated by the crackdown itself that they're leaning into as well. And the prime example of that we've seen so far is that Department of Justice lawyer who hit that ICE agent with a sandwich last week. Right? I mean, like that is such a bizarre story, right? In so many different ways. But I think it's really illustrative of one of the stories that they really want out of this crime crackdown is liberal DC, kind of like upscale liberal DC reacting against the authoritarian putsch and cracking down on that and putting that forward to the MAGA base as another part of it. I mean, like they arrested that guy in real time, right? And then they were like, well, that wasn't kind of theatrical enough, so they rearrested him, right? They sent a bunch of FBI agents and U.S.
he
Marshals
offered to come down and surrender at the police department. And they're like, no, don't come down here and turn yourself in. We're not gonna send a squad car. We're gonna send like an MRAP.
Right. And they march into his building and frog march him out of there, and they're taping the whole thing, and they release a sizzle reel about it. And like supposedly this is like the crime crackdown is arresting the guy who hit you with a sandwich because of your crime crackdown. I mean, it's totally circular and bizarre, but it creates this kind of like I said before, sort of the content that they're trying to get in people's feeds out of all this.
That's the point. And the fact that, I don't know if you saw, but over the weekend, Andrew, one of the tapes that was out of police acting badly is, an onlooker saying something to the effect of, you guys are destroying the city, and some masked purported agent of the state. And again, who knows? Because nobody knows who these people are. Says the liberals already ruined it.
Well, you guys are ruining this country. You know that, right? The liberals already ruined it.
There's another video of agents of the state tearing down a sign, which was an anti-ICE sign. When the agents of the state begin identifying with the regime, isn't that typically a trouble sign?
Yeah, it's sure not great, right? I mean, you could spend a lot of time teasing out, how far down various slippery slopes you are when you see that sort of thing. But I feel like we should all at least be able to agree, not awesome. And not only is it happening, but it's happening and the regime itself sees it as the case that it wants to make. I mean, that instance of the sign being pulled down in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of DC, it was just a sign that said Mount Pleasant melts ice, right? It was just somebody that hung a banner. And ICE itself posted on X a video of, this operation of 8 ICE agents. I guess they're all ICE agents. It takes 8 guys to do this. They're all masked. They're all like full tactical gear and everything. They're like gathering around the sign, and then they pull it down. And then one of them balls it up and he says, "We're taking America back, baby."
We're taking America back, baby. Esto es para América. Los Estados Unidos es número uno.
That isn't just some like psychos goofing off. And that's the thing ICE then wants to package as video content and put out to, through official channels, through official government channels to an audience of the entire country. And I think that you would have to be quite willfully blind not to take the obvious lesson from that, which is that they want you to know this is the policy of the United States, to do all of these things now. So it's quite grim.
Guys, we'll be back with more of this. Hit like and subscribe. Follow the channel so you're with us through all of this absolute insanity. Andrew, thanks for joining me. Good luck, America.